Hey everyone, welcome back to Malaysia in Focus, where we dive deep into the political, social, and economic stories actively shaping our nation today. Because today's story, a historic reform that collapsed by a razor-thin margin of just 2 votes, has a whole lot more hiding beneath the surface than you might think. And what you're about to learn is going to completely change how we understand who actually holds power in our parliament.
So, let's map out exactly how we are going to unravel this constitutional mystery today. We'll kick things off with the historic failure itself, take a look at the 22-year shadow behind it, break down how this proposed tenure limit actually works, and then we'll dive right into the royal debate and what happens next. All right, Section 1, the historic 2-vote failure.
We are starting right at the shocking climax on March 2, 2026. Picture this. A highly anticipated reform bill suddenly collapses right on the floor of the Dewan Rakyat. And it all came down to just this single digit, 2. The unity government missed the absolute 2/3 supermajority you absolutely need to amend the federal constitution by a razor-thin margin of only 2 votes. It is wild when you think about it.
When you look at the math, it tells quite a story. We had 146 MPs supporting the bill, but they needed 148. It was actually the combination of 44 MPs deciding to abstain and another 32 who were just completely absent that dealt the final, fatal blow to this reform.
But honestly, the real kicker here is who actually didn't show up. We're talking about key figures from UMNO, MIC, and East Malaysia's STAR. Their absence exposed some really serious cracks inside the unity government's own coalition. It just goes to show, having the numbers on paper doesn't mean a thing if you can't deliver the actual votes when it counts.
Section 2, the 22-year shadow.
To really grasp why this tenure limit was even proposed in the first place, we've got to look backward at our long history of executive dominance. For decades, our prime ministers could basically serve indefinitely. You can see the result of that concentrated power. Mahathir Mohamad's massive 22-year tenure, followed later by Najib Razak's 9-year administration. But then, the pendulum swung completely in the opposite direction. We hit the early 2020s and saw a chaotic, rapid-fire succession of PMs serving just 17 and 15 months. It was a roller coaster.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 10-year limit explained.
So, the Constitution Amendment Bill 2026 was the government's big swing at solving this power concentration. The absolute key word to focus on here is aggregate. By trying to introduce Article 43(2)A, the government was actively trying to close a massive loophole. They wanted to make sure a leader couldn't just step down for a bit, let things cool off, and come back later to magically reset the clock. 10 years total, continuous or not, and you are done.
But here is the massive aha moment of this whole explainer. Clause 4D made the bill completely retroactive, meaning all the years our current politicians had already served, those would instantly count against their 10-year limit. It wasn't just a rule for some distant future, it was a strict cap starting right now.
Let's put that into perspective with the folks running the show right now. If this had actually passed, PMX Anwar Abraham would have maxed out his premiership by the early 2030s, leaving him with just 7 years left. Muhyiddin Yassin would have 8 years remaining, and Ismail Sabri Yaakob would have 9. It firmly, legally capped their entire political lifespans.
Now, if this breakdown is helping you make sense of the political noise, hit that like and subscribe button. It's the absolute best way to stay updated on Malaysia's biggest stories and ensure you're always one step ahead. Come be part of an informed community right here with us. All right, moving into Section 4, the Royal Prerogative Debate.
Now, we have to look at the other side of the aisle, because the opposition, led by Pakatan Nasional, didn't just block this bill for the fun of it. They brought forward a highly serious constitutional counter-argument. Opposition leader Hamzah Zainuddin pointed out that legally capping the term could unconstitutionally shackle the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's absolute discretion. Because think about it, if a leader hits that 10-year limit but still genuinely commands the confidence of the Dewan Rakyat, this law would essentially bar the king from appointing them.
And this is a brilliant illustration of the opposition's counterproposal. They argued that if the goal is truly to stop the concentration of power, maybe the focus shouldn't be on the term limit. Instead, stop letting the Prime Minister also act as the Finance Minister, a dual, incredibly powerful role that Anwar currently holds, just exactly like his predecessors did. It's a fundamental structural debate.
Which leads perfectly into Section 5, the fixed-term parliament problem.
This is where the mechanics get really tricky. And we have to ask ourselves a tough question. How can you strictly limit someone to 2 5-year terms when Malaysian PMs have the sheer power to call snap elections whenever they want? The math just doesn't neatly line up with our Westminster parliamentary system.
Governance experts have warned that without a fixed-term Parliament Act locking in specific election dates, a PM nearing their 10-year limit faces some huge structural risks. They could suffer a lame duck period, losing all influence by year 9, or they might face internal mutinies where allies trigger snap elections, which burns through the PM's eligibility way before 10 calendar years are actually up.
So, Section 6, what happens next? With the bill dead on arrival, we have to ask why it was pushed so aggressively in the first place. The political reality is, this bill was likely rushed to appease urban voters and keep vital coalition partners like DAP happy, especially right after a crushing defeat in the 2025 Sabah state elections. The government desperately needed a quick reform win, and that severely squeezed the timeline.
Moving forward, Anwar's administration really only has a few paths they can take. They can either shelve the bill entirely, bring the opposition to the negotiating table by forming a bipartisan special committee to fix those legal details, or completely pivot their energy back to the bread-and-butter economic issues before the 2028 elections roll around.
Thanks so much for watching today's breakdown. If you want to be the first to know and keep making sense of our complex politics together, join thousands of Malaysians who want clarity, not confusion. Tap like, hit subscribe, and let's keep the conversation going.
Ultimately, this entire saga proves one massive point about our modern political landscape. In a fractured parliament, just having the most seats on paper isn't enough to push through historical changes. You absolutely need flawless internal discipline to make constitutional amendments a reality.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. Can Anwar's fragile coalition actually learn and recover from this harsh defeat? Or is true, lasting institutional reform in Malaysia simply too fragile to survive right now? We'll be watching closely. See you in the next one.